Good evening, and welcome to the Smyrna Municipal Planning Commission meeting. This is our September 7th meeting, and with that, I'll call it to order, and if you'll stand, Mike will lead us in the prayer and Amy in the pledge.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this beautiful day you've given us. Father God, just continue to lead, guide, and direct us in all we do in our lives. Father, just go with this commission as we do the town's work to further the town. Father God, just continue to watch over our first responders, our police and our fire, and our city workers, Father. Just keep them all safe. Father, we love you and we thank you for the many blessings that you give us each day. In Christ's name, amen.
Face the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Mike and Amy. Citizens' comments. Is Mr. Miller here? If you'd come forward and give us your name and address, please.
My name is Robert Miller. I live on Ledbury Drive, 1215. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I wanted to speak out against the rezoning proposal for the 604 Rock Springs Road property, item 5B on the agenda. My street, Ledbury, it's a quiet street. There's 11 houses on there. Kids, play, basketball, ride their bikes, and walk our dogs. If the 220 townhomes are built on that property, they'll have to, basically, we won't be able to do that safely anymore. The traffic, it's one of the main thoroughfares to get to Sam Ridley. Let's see. I'm assuming that we would have to widen the road, and not really in favor of, losing part of my land or part of my property to making the road wider. And again, just wanted to ask that you all not move forward with the rezoning for that parcel.
Okay.
Thank you. And,
Thank you,
have a
Mr.
nice
Miller.
evening.
Okay. Our next item is approval of the minutes of the August 3rd, 2023 meeting. Counselor, are the meeting notes in order?
In order as to form, Chairman.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the commission concerning the minutes? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting minutes are approved. We are now on to old business. Our first is annexation, zoning, and plan of service request. Joe Haddock's request to be deferred for 2 months. Bill Francis Road and Interstate 840, annexation I2C2 and R3 zoning request.
Yeah, this request has been, they have requested that it be deferred again for 2 months.
Okay. So we've received a request to defer, so with that, we'll need to take action, and I will entertain a motion.
Move to defer for 2 months.
I have a motion to defer for 2 months. Do I have a second? Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of this request to defer for 2 months signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This request has been referred. Our next item is Matt Huff, 6554 and 6588 Lee Road, annexation and PRD zoning request.
So this request is for annexation and PRD zoning. You did look at it last month. There was discussion last month, and at the developer's request, it was deferred this month as well to this meeting. It's about 34.48 acres, and the requested is a PRD of 100 single-family lots, is what has been requested. Surrounding zoning is a mix of R3 and the Gwen Farms PRD in town and RM in Rutherford County. The land use plan would support medium-density, single-family residential in this area. Lee Road is designated as a collector on the major thoroughfare plan. The right-of-way would be required to be dedicated as a part of this development. As a part of this annexation request, staff would recommend the annexation of the existing right-of-way of Lee Road from Montgomery Way to the westernmost edge of map 51 parcel 5, which is a distance of approximately 5,814 feet. The required minimum fire flow is 1,000 gallons per minute at 20 PSI. That is not, does not exist at this point. This would be served by Consolidated Utility District. They did submit a request to them for that and to CUD. And CUD did come back with some off-site water improvements that would be required to meet the fire flow at this location. So it is feasible, but would require a pretty substantial investment of some off-site water improvements. We did ask for a traffic study. We did receive that study today, and so we have received it now. Charles did look at it. We did recommend any improvements as recommended by the study be completed by the developer. They did show only a single lane exiting the site, and Charles did recommend that there be 2 lanes, so a left and a right straight through lane as a exiting. There was not a recommendation from the study that there be any turn lanes within Lee Road. The town is looking at some improvements to Lee Road, and so it could be addressed at that point with those improvements as a center turn lane. One of the recommendations also was that there be some improvements at Rock Springs Road and Montgomery Way as far as a right turn lane be added. But that is already failing without this development. So Charles did not think that needed to be, or saddled, this development didn't need to be saddled with that off-site improvement. So since it's already failing. So those were his recommendations when he looked at it. A couple other comments we have were just, again, just from CUD regarding there is an 8-inch water main. Part of those, the improvements, the outside water improvements, that 8-inch water main has to be upsized to a 12-inch. And that's but that is what is existing now as an 8. And again, that there's not adequate infrastructure there to meet fire flow requirements at this time. Again, you all looked at this last month. Nothing has changed with the layout or the number of lots or anything like that. So that's what you looked at last month. Again, we do have that additional information with the study, and we do have the additional information from CUD regarding the fire flow. So that's all I've got.
Okay, I want to make sure I understand as far as what the traffic study and what staff is recommending as far as the improvements.
The traffic study did not recommend anything within Lee Road, but did recommend a right turn lane be added on Montgomery Way onto Rock Springs Road, which is within the Woodmont development.
Right.
So staff, Mr. King, town engineer, did review the study. He's okay without the turn lane in Lee Road because of the project the town's looking at there. And that his opinion was that because there's already a failure at the right turn, that intersection improvement at Rock Springs and Montgomery is already an issue, that this development is not causing that problem.
Okay.
That they should not be saddled with that issue to be fixed. He did recommend, they're showing a single exit lane leaving the property, leaving the project, and so he did recommend there be 2 outbound at the intersection with Lee Road, that there be 2 outbound lanes, a left turn and a straight, but at this point still.
So,
left and a
I'm
right
sorry,
turn.
you said a single turn lane from the subdivision?
Yeah, like a left turn and a right turn coming out.
Out?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're just showing a single one. He recommended it be a double exiting lanes.
Okay. All right, and then as far as the actual elevations, the amenities, everything else is still the same or as what we saw
Same as what
last
you looked
month?
at last month, yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
There's still just one way in, one way out, right, Kevin?
Correct, there's a stub street in the west, north, and east for future development. But at this time, this initial development, there wouldn't be just a single entrance in and out, yes.
When we initially looked at that, talking about the stubs, were we not looking at the property maybe adjacent to that?
The initial, there was a request a few months ago for annexation for there's 2 tracts of land that's been requested here. There's kind of a tract fronting Lee Road and then a tract north of that. The northernmost tract and the tract immediately adjacent to the east that comes around to Lee Road was up for our annexation request at one point a few months ago. That request was withdrawn, but there would have been only one access at that point as well for that project. I don't know that this commission saw that or not, it was submitted. It got withdrawn, it may have been on your agenda and withdrawn.
Yeah, I think that's what I recall, but it was, I don't think we actually heard it, but I think it
We
was.
didn't
in
actually
what-
vote on it because it
Yeah.
got withdrawn. At some point, that property to the east certainly, obviously, all the tracks all the way around could develop at some point. Where it's stubbed, the property to the north is kind of adjacent to the Gwynn Farms development. As far as west and east, we don't have anything right now.
Given the growth that we're seeing here with the proposed stubs, is staff comfortable with this, with the one entrance as far as for now?
Yes. It's 100 lots. I mean, it's kind of at that max kind of limit you want to get to, but at 100 lots, we're okay with that.
Okay. Other questions? Charles?
A couple regarding traffic. Did the traffic study consider the cumulative impact of the developments up and down Lee Road?
I don't know, Charles, it did. And Charles is nodding his head yes.
So even with that, they don't recommend a left turn lane?
Not just for this one development, no. And that'll be in a future road project to three-lane the Lee Road. That is a future road project. So that will be coming.
So in terms of the intersection improvement, have we done proportional cost sharing? While it's probably not applicable to saddle this developer with the entire cost of the improvement, is it 10%, 15%, whatever the attributable cause might be?
That's something we could certainly do. We haven't said, that hasn't been established or set up at this point, no. That's certainly something that we could look at doing, yes.
Other questions?
So the road, Lee Road, where this development ties into, is that in city now or is that county?
It is in the county, but staff did recommend the annexation. If you
Okay.
recommend this annexation, we would recommend that it be annexed.
Okay, so if it's annexed in, so from where this development is to the next development to the east, do we have a county spot there? Would it all be from that
It would be,
development out?
it would be all county, all the way. It's already been annexed from Montgomery Way east
Okay,
for, not all the way to Rocky Fork, but everything that's been annexed into the town as far as the property north or south.
where the
is
sewer
annexed.
went through?
Right.
Yeah,
And on the west side, this would get everything that's west, kind of from Montgomery Way west, that has been annexed into the town. Basically, it's to the west end of Gwynn Farms.
so it annexed the road all the way up to this development? And then it's just,
Yeah.
it's not far from there back to Cook's Lane, is it?
Yeah, because it would go, like I said, if it doesn't show up on this map, it maybe shows up. Yeah. You have the parcels kind of to the west there. That's Gwynn Farms. It would go all the way to that west end, the western edge of Gwynn Farms, all the way back to Montgomery Way. As what staff has recommended.
Okay. Anything else? I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve with staff comments.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve with staff comments. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
This motion is approved. Our next item will be a rezoning request, and that comes for Jennifer Speck, 602 and 604 Rock Springs Road, rezoning R1 to PRD.
Yes, this is a request for rezoning, existing, already in the city, about 31.68 acres, currently zoned R1, been requested to be rezoned to a PRD. Surrounding zoning is a mix of R4, R6, C2, and PRD, which is the Harts Branch Village PRD. The land use plan would support medium-density, single-family residential in this area. Rock Springs Road is designated as a collector on the major thoroughfare plan, so right-of-way is shown to be dedicated as a part of this development. Imperial Boulevard is designated as a minor arterial on the major thoroughfare plan, and that existing right-of-way does dead end into the northeastern corner of this tract, and they are shown on the plan as the extension of that right-of-way across this tract as well. This proposed PRD is for 222 townhomes. We have requested a traffic study, and any improvements by that study must be completed. They did submit the study. We had asked them to add the Ledbury Drive connection. That wasn't considered as a part of the traffic study. This traffic study did not recommend a left turn lane onto Rock Springs Road. We did look at that, and after I discussed it with Charles just before the meeting, again, the traffic study did not recommend that left turn lane. He is actually, in consideration of just to try to make sure traffic doesn't speed up any faster in that area, would not recommend that left turn lane be constructed. It wasn't recommended by the traffic study, just from the standpoint of traffic calming. The required minimum fire flow is, as with the last project, is 1,000 gallons per minute at 20 PSI. This is not currently available at this site. However, the town has a water line improvement project, which should be completed in approximately a year, which should take care of that issue. Number 7 has been addressed regarding a fire hydrant, adding a fire hydrant near lot 174, so that's been taken care of. We can remove that comment. Road G is shown connecting to Imperial Boulevard, as this road is not constructed to this property yet. In the interim, a turnaround compliant with the fire code is required. This cul-de-sac is required to be a 96-foot diameter cul-de-sac. I believe that still needs to remain because I believe it's still shown as 80. And then number 9 would need to remain. A second entrance into the development will be required to be constructed as a part of the phase 1, as there will be more than 100 dwellings in phase 1. So they are showing, as was mentioned in the citizen comments earlier, they are showing a secondary entrance into Ledbury, as well as a future entrance onto Imperial Boulevard. Again, that road would have to be extended to meet this, to get to this tract of land in order for that secondary entrance to be available for them. So, and I guess that's what I've got.
Not quite yet. Hold on just a second. We'll talk to Kevin first. Kevin, let's address a couple things for Mr. Miller. Number 1, Mr. Miller talked about if this were connected to Ledbury, would would it require Ledbury to be widened?
That was not a recommendation of the traffic study. I would not anticipate that we would look to widen.
Okay.
No.
The second thing is, and I know we're, and kind of how he feels here, because it happened to me, and where I lived at one point, I had a street that dead end that I lived on, and there was no cul-de-sac on the end of it, and one day there was a big blast, and the next thing I know, I had a road that was open there. So with the way that Ledbury was originally constructed without a cul-de-sac at the end, was that in anticipation that this could potentially serve as a road that would be stubbed into, or is it?
It was
part of
certainly
it?
anticipated. That was certainly developed prior to my time with the town, but it was certainly, so I can't speak to, I wasn't here when it came through, but I'm sure that was the intent, was that it was stubbed to this property for it to be extended at some point into this development. This development's had a single-family zoning for the most part. It certainly has it now, so I mean, it may have been anticipated it'd be more single-family certainly, and not townhomes, but it was certainly intended that it would be extended at some point in the future
Okay.
to provide, you know, connectivity between neighborhoods.
And I guess my next question for staff would be, as far as Imperial goes, is that on any of our thoroughfare plans as far as future development of this roadway?
Yes, it's on a thoroughfare plan to connect through this tract and through the adjoining tract of that, and then the next one to connect over to Mason Tucker. There's a road is stubbed from Mason Tucker currently, Danstead Drive, I believe it's Drive. That would be a connection, kind of and so you would have a connection from Mason Tucker through Imperial all the way over to Rock Springs Road.
Okay,
It's been on thoroughfare plan for a long time.
okay.
So that street would eventually come through the C2 zoning up there?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's what I had for the moment as far as, okay, anything else for staff while we're kind of looking at this?
Kevin, the Harts Branch development, how many homes are in there?
It's 160 something.
Was it 164?
167 actually.
Okay.
I actually had a note here. It's about 7.5 per acre, I think, because it's a small. It's less units, but it's also less land. So it's
There's a lot of flood area they're working with too.
There is some
so-
flood area they're having to avoid. Yes.
I do have a follow-up. How does this work as far as with this? Are we moving towards something that we're developing as a walkability into the depot area and the downtown area?
Yes, we, as part of they're sure shown on here, and the staff did recommend it, and they're showing it on their plans, is correct, what the frontage they have along Rock Springs Road, building a sidewalk there. Harts Branch is doing the same thing. And so we actually have a town project to kind of fill in the gaps of what they're not doing to create a sidewalk down to downtown, yes.
Okay. All right. Other questions for staff? Go ahead, Charles.
Excuse me, I have several. The ordinances call for the preservation of existing trees and site features. Could you discuss what efforts are being made to preserve what looks like a very robust canopy?
There's nothing shown specifically on this drawing with regards to any tree preservation. Our ordinance does require you, they do show the treed areas, but our ordinance requires you to, basically any tree over 18-inch caliper, to keep it, and if you can't keep it, to replace it as near as possible to the location it's taken out. They are showing the buffer adjoining the landscape, the single-family, adjoining single-family zoned areas. But they're not showing anything necessarily with regards to that. We typically look at that at the site plan stage when we asked for that tree survey. So there's nothing indicating one way or the other on this as far as any tree preservation.
Except it appears, based on the drawings, that they're going to provide the standard type C landscape buffer
Yes.
and not even use a very extensive existing buffer that's there abutting the single-family units.
That's
I've
not-
driven the areas, I'm sure many have, and it's a very, very dense foliage right now, adjacent to the single-family homes. The other and probably more relevant question is regarding traffic. If we do open up the Ledbury connection, I think virtually every resident is going to go through that neighborhood to get to Sam Ridley. I mean, that's clearly going to be the passageway of choice. I think that has a potentially significant negative impact on the single-family neighborhood there. And I think one of our charges is to make sure that there are not significant adverse impacts on adjacent properties, and it seems to me that that may be the case here. I guess that wasn't a question, sorry. Did the traffic study identify the number of cars that would be traversing on a daily basis?
But I'm sure it
Yeah,
probably,
I'd have to-
yeah, it's.
Like I said, we just got it this afternoon, so we'll get into it, but yeah, that will be one of the major, it will pull traffic off Rock Springs, but there will be a major one going back to the signal at Sam Ridley.
Yeah, especially if you live kind of that northern half or two-thirds of the development, it's good, but when you're going to San Ridley Parkway, it would be the closest way to get there.
Well, I think even the southern portion, because the other developments that are occurring there will be taking that route to get to Sam Ridley. So you're having I think, a cumulative impact at that point.
Is there a timeline about Imperial Boulevard being extended?
There's not a specific timeline. For whatever reason, when the apartments were built, the entire right-of-way was dedicated, but the entire road wasn't built. I can't speak to why that happened. In discussions with the commercial development that's on the east side of Imperial Boulevard, they will be utilizing all of that road frontage, so at some point there would be. Their first phase is not utilizing the existing road in their first phase. So certainly there could be, they would be extending it. I don't know what their timeline is. I mean, there's no, their phase one, they're not going to need to, and that had 4 buildings in it. So it could be soon, or it may be a few years, who knows, yeah.
Okay.
And I have the same concerns with Ledbury. I know that we have to have 2 entrances due to the size of this, but I would almost prefer it to be, the other option is Imperial Boulevard versus Ledbury, because I agree with what you're saying. People are going to take that shortcut to Sam Ridley through that neighborhood.
Did the developer indicate why they chose such a dense townhouse footprint rather than single-family?
I think if you look,
Yeah.
and this was my read when I looked at it, when you look at the R6 with Imperial Garden, you look at Harts Branch and some of the other developments, I don't think it's necessarily inconsistent with what's in the area.
Depends on which direction you're going from.
Well, if we're taking it and moving towards
Right.
town, then I think it would support that.
I agree. I think it's a very fitting development for what we've already done in that area.
Let's do this. I'm hearing a lot of questions, and I see that we have our developer here on that. So, sir, you'd come up and give us your name and address, and let's talk through the questions that the commission has.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Estes, 2925 Berry Hill Drive, Nashville, Tennessee. And if you'll give me a couple of minutes, I'll start from the beginning, and I think I can answer some of these questions or make some suggestions that if we can't move forward tonight, and I hope we can, but if not, that we can definitely be ready to move forward next time. So we met with the city upon putting this property under contract and met with them about what the land use was, what was appropriate, what they thought was appropriate, what we wanted to do, and we ended up landing on three different, although they're all townhomes, three different product type of the townhomes. We have surrounded the single family, the larger, wider townhomes with master bedrooms down to, and 2-car garages to try to accommodate people closer to my age. I'm not sure how to say that anymore. We have front entry townhomes with 35 or 20-foot wide drives, 35-foot deep to accommodate 4 cars for the more entry-level prices. And then we have, if you look back there, we have a large courtyard that has alley-loaded townhomes with 2-car garages on the rear that are 3-story tall that creates an area of townhomes fronted on open space to kind of create a very formal feel. We have sidewalks throughout this community to accommodate pedestrian activity, whether it's going up towards Rock Spring or back towards Imperial. As far as Commissioner, I apologize, Mr. Charles, because I can't read your last name, I do apologize. That's a very valid concern, what you mentioned with the landscaping along Hickory Trace Annex, and that's something that I think we should go back and maybe look at preserving 40, 50 feet of that landscape that's beside it and protect that, because those are existing neighbors and they've been there longer than we have, and that's a very valid concern. As far as traffic, come tackle me if I step out of line, but we do have the traffic experts here. But one thing we have done when we put a private development next to a public development and there's public right-of-way extended into us, we've offered to put up an emergency gate with the fire department having the ability to open that gate, whether remotely or not, but to prevent cut-through traffic. I'm not the staff and I'm not the commissioners, but that's one of the things we have done in other times when this concern has been written up. It does provide connection in emergencies, which is part of the two-way in and out, but it also does provide for some protection of cut-through traffic. We are been contacted in the last 2 days by the resident next door to us with the 4 acres in between us and that, and it may be appropriate for me to defer tonight and see if we could work something out that would allow us to have 2 accesses off Rock Springs. But I would love to hear all your concerns, so if I came back to you next month with a little bit more detailed answers to these questions tonight, that I kind of make sure I'm covering everything. But I mean, these are very good questions. I want to make sure I answer them and not leave them out here hanging. But I do think that would address maybe the 2 entrances, and then we can talk to the traffic director and talk about what his thoughts are on crash gates and things like that, and then work a little bit on the landscaping. And then as far as the townhomes, once again, we've offered 3 product types to differentiate for our clients, but we also do strongly agree. We are, I guess it is what lens you look through, but we're beside Hart's Branch and Imperial Garden Apartments, and we are very transitional and do not feel like single family maybe is the most appropriate here, but we do feel like larger townhomes with master bedrooms down is appropriate to buffer us between the single family and our development, or the remainder of our development. So I'm here to answer any questions, and I thank you for giving me a few minutes to speak on this.
I know something you're always asked, and I think it's important to know when we're talking about this, what price point or price range would you anticipate for what we're looking at building here?
Yeah, that's $1 million question
Yeah, it
nowadays,
is.
Commissioner Morrell, with prices and everything. I would expect that we would range somewhere between the lower stuff ranging around the 280s and the higher stuff around the 450 range, which sounds ridiculous to me, but that also just shows you how old I'm getting.
I thought you'd probably say something to that effect as well. Can you talk about, I know that in the packet that we do have the elevations, but can you talk a little bit more about the products that you're proposing?
Yes.
Along with, square footage ranges that you're looking at in here?
So like I said, we have the products divided almost equally, about 33% each, couple percentage points each way. The larger stuff, that ranges anywhere from 16 up to 2,400 square foot, depending on which exactly model of the larger townhomes you get. Like I said, that's excluding the 2-car garage. I'm just talking about the heated space. So they're significant, they're basically designed for empty nesters. And so sometimes, well, many times empty nesters will go with 2 bedrooms, 1 down or both down, and then use the upstairs as office space or rec rooms or whatever you want to call it, grandkids area. The entry level stuff, as I would call it, are 2 and 3 bedrooms. They're both offered. The middle units are more 2 bedrooms, with the end units being a little larger, and the 3 bedrooms, they have the 1-car garages. They are normally between 1,300 and 1,800 square foot. And then the rear loaded, alley loaded stuff is quite large as well. It's normally over 2,000 square foot with a 2-car garage, 3 bedrooms, and it's got a little bit more of a modern facade to it. So all this will blend. We'll all use the same materials, the same color palettes. We do offer the dog park and pickleball courts for the young and the young at heart. And then we do have playgrounds and swings and all for the really young at heart, or those who want to see if they can still break an ankle while swinging. So we do try to offer, and a walking path, so we do try to offer a wide range of amenities for this. And once again, any other questions, I'll be glad to answer. And once again, all the materials there's no vinyl, they're all quality materials.
Your projected build time for phase 1 before you move to phase 2?
I would expect we would start construction sometime next July, and actual vertical construction of the units probably in 2025. These things typically build about 60 units a year, and that speaks to the somewhat robust growth that Smyrna is going through. We've developed probably 600 lots in Smyrna the last 6 years since I've been here, and we don't have any of them on the ground today. So it's just, and we've done a lot of that out around the Stewart's Creek school area, but there's very robust growth, and it continues to come to Smyrna. And this is one of those housing products where, we're finding we're not finding much of the middle, but we're kind of finding the young and then the older in high demand for this product. And then the families we're finding wanting to kind of go out towards the Stewart's Creek area with houses and yards and things like that. So I would expect this would take probably 4 years, from sometime to 28 or 29 to complete fully. And once again, after hearing, and the same thing happened to me. I lived on a stub out street, as I would call it, but I'm in the business, so I'm supposed to know what they are. When they get extended, that's very surprising and upsetting. So I think what I'd like to do is ask you if you had any more questions I could bring to you next time, but ask to defer this to the next meeting.
Okay.
See if we can't work that front parcel out and come in with maybe 2 accesses, and talk to the traffic director about maybe gating Ledbury, if he wasn't opposed to that, with a crash gate.
Okay, I think that's fair.
So it seems like some of the concern about the traffic is, in the current state, for those, if this were to pass, the residents in that area going to Sam Ridley would cut through the Ledbury, possibly, right?
I'm sure,
And
the
then
easiest way.
It's the easiest way, right? But if we did not have Leadberry, if that was not, either it was gated or it wasn't connected or whatever, and this passes, even if you had 2 streets down to Rock Springs, still people going to Sam Ridley, where would they go? They'd go down and over to Mason Tucker and still right back up the way, right?
I think of traffic a lot like water. It's gonna find the easiest way to go, and I say that as someone who doesn't get on big roads as much as I can avoid them.
So I guess my point with that is,
Traffic is kind of a learned
It's still
thing.
gonna be on Mason.
my point with that is it's
But it won't
still
be
gonna
those.
be on Mason Tucker, and it's actually gonna then impact even more homeowners than the Leadberry.
Well,
Nothing
my
against them.
personal opinion is
Right.
connecting roads, the more you connect, the better traffic gets. That's my personal opinion and my personal experience. But at the same time, you serve a community and you have to take more concerns into account than I do. So, like I said, I can't make that decision, but I thought I would offer it up and talk to the traffic. And he may say, that's not what we want to do. And we'll come here and say, wasn't what the city requested. But I think it's a fair question to ask.
And for my 2 cents worth, I was glad to see it going up Leadberry, because it's always been stubbed to do that for future
Right.
use.
And I understand, and we all ask for connectivity for a reason. It's fearful. If you live next to something that's not extended, it's fearful, and that's natural for us all to experience. So I want to be compassionate but ask the questions. And so I think I'd like to request this to be deferred 30 days, just so I can answer the landscape questions a little bit more in detail, the traffic questions a little bit more in detail, then come back to you in 30 days and ask you to approve it.
If I may, I'd like to, and I may be out of where I should be right here, but I was about to make this comment anyway. This is a rezoning request,
Yes.
right, from R1 to PRD. And so we've got the option to not grant the request, right?
Right.
So I want to make sure that that's still clear, because all we've talked about is the positive side of the request, and it's not a bad thing necessarily, but I think we all need to pay attention to the fact that that's a lot of density there. Frankly, I'm not a fan of that much density in that area. Now, does it flow fairly well? You could make that argument, but you could also make the argument that it doesn't flow very well, and we're adding extra. So
I understand.
whenever we come back and actually vote on this, I'm going to be against the density part of it, not the traffic part, but the overall density part and all that brings with it.
I understand.
One thing, you'd mentioned the square footage on some of the smaller homes, 13 to 1,300 to 1,600 square feet, is that right?
1,800, I believe.
13 to 18.
Do we, I thought we had like a minimum we'd like to see, was it 1,400?
We've had different things.
Yeah.
We've had some 1,350 or 1,400 is generally what we've seen for the most part.
I can
We've had
look
some
at
that were
that.
1,700.
Yeah, and I think it's been
more.
more of a range, because I think there is some thought into, are we making everything so non-affordable, and I don't know that we can necessarily drill it down to just a certain number on the high end or low end. So I think we've looked at it in ranges, and I think that we even have made, I think, for whatever reason, 1,450, 1,400 comes to mind, but I do recall another subdivision where we looked at it and there were a couple of, 1,300 square foot homes, and we were thinking about, maybe empty nesters or maybe some of the seniors and things along those lines. So I don't know, or it's not my impression that we want to just necessarily tie down to a number either on the top or bottom end. So we've got a request to defer, and if it would be the commission's pleasure, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to defer.
Okay, so a motion to defer for, we need a specific date determined. Yeah, 30 days?
30 days.
Okay, a motion to defer for 30 days. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second to defer for 30 days. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is deferred. All right. We are now on to final plats, the first one being Woodmont, Section 9, Blue Diamond Drive and Garville Avenue, owner developer Meritage Homes.
Yeah, this is the final plat. Again, it's been on your agenda for a couple of months. That was deferred at the developer's request, and so this will be for approval tonight. It's 64 lots, 27.22 acres. It's in the Woodmont PRD. We had just a couple of really informational comments regarding Blue Diamond Drive as a collector, and they are showing the adequate right-of-way there, and minimum fire flow requirement, the standard single-family residential requirements. So they are meeting all the requirements of the PRD as well as the preliminary plat, and we would recommend this to you.
Okay. Questions for Kevin on this one? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve. Move to approve with staff
I
comments.
have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Lots of seconds. I have a motion and a second to approve with staff comments. Further discussion. All those in favor of approving this final plat signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion's approved. We're now on to new business. Our first agenda item is annexation, zoning, and plan of service request. Jennifer Speck, 8613 and 8675 Rocky Fork Amelville Road, annexation and PRD zoning.
This is a request for annexation. That's about really 5 tracts of land that total about 39.65 acres along the Rocky Fork Amelville Road, currently zoned RM in Rutherford County. Would be along with the annexation request is a request for a PRD zoning. Surrounding zoning in town is a mix of a couple of different PRDs, Blakeney PRD and the Courtyard at Stewart Creek, and then RM in Rutherford County. Land use plan would support medium-density, single-family residential in this area. The major thoroughfare plan does designate Rocky Fork Amelville Road as a minor arterial, and adequate right-of-way would be required to be dedicated as a part of this development. This proposed PRD is for 33 townhomes and 80 single-family lots. We did have 79 in there. They had the number actually hasn't changed, but they had the same number on 2 different lots. So it's still the same. It's 80 lots, 80 single-family lots and 33 townhomes. We did ask them, and they did add parcel 40 to the plans and annexation request. That was an adjoining tract that has the location of a cemetery, but we wanted to go ahead and annex that with this request as well. The required minimum fire flow is 1,000 gallons per minute at 20 psi. Again, for anything under 3,600 square feet. Fire hydrants are required to be within 500 feet of all lots, and all portions of the townhomes must be within 150 feet of the fire truck access. We did ask them to add a hydrant. There's a hydrant already shown. We just asked them to extend it to the road there next to. It previously was numbered at 95. It's actually 96 now, since they corrected the numbering. So we do need to keep comment 8 just with that change from 95 to 96. Some of these lots will most likely be identified as critical lots. We would look at that at the preliminary plat stage. I did want to let them know about that. Comment number 10, they have corrected the first part of that regarding the 18-foot wide driveways on the full length. Sheet 2.0 and sheet 6.0 still are kind of conflict with regards to the front setbacks for the townhomes. Sheet 2.0 still shows 20 foot. The details on 6.0 are 35. 35 is what's required, so they need to clarify that. And they do, their information, porches, they did indicate that sometimes the porches may extend in front of certainly in front of the house with a roof. So those are required to meet setbacks if they do have a roof. Number 12 and 13 have been addressed, so we can remove both of those. And then, again, The last couple of comments are from CUD. And CUD has indicated there is adequate fire flow in this location for this development. This would be a connection to the Blakeney development in a couple of different locations. So it'll be an extension there, as well as another access to Rocky Fork Allenville Road. And then a stub street as well to the north, to the vacant tract that's to the north there. There is kind of there's two different types. There's townhome lots, and then there's two different sizes on the single-family lots. And they did deliver tonight just some renderings on the lots that are closest to Rocky Fork Allenville Road. They did they're kind of an alley-loaded type project, and they wanted to just had some renderings for those, and they did want us to hand those out, so I'll pass those out there. And that's a supplement to what you've had in your packet. I believe that's all I've got.
Questions for Kevin?
On the tree canopy, it also appears to be a very robust tree canopy. And if you look at the way the development is laid out, there appears to be really nice opportunities to preserve a lot of that tree canopy. I wonder if the developers made any comments or thoughts about that.
I don't think they haven't. There are some areas, certainly, as you said, there's one large lot, there's some pretty steep topography on the western side of this property. And they kind of have that set up as kind of one large estate lot. So certainly, there's an opportunity there, and there's some open space that's being set aside just as open space. That's not necessarily going to be
Yeah, I mean, the
improved
layout
in
seems
any
to
way.
flow very nicely, and there
So-
just seems to be a lot of opportunity there.
So again, they haven't indicated anything specific to that, but there is, certainly there's opportunities for them, and they're hearing your comments. So we could look at that again. We would look at typically at the site plan or the plat stage. But
Kevin, when looking at this and taking into consideration Blakeney subdivision, Blakeney Commons, Westover, this is very consistent with what's been proposed and approved in this area, is it not?
yes. Yeah, kind of the mix of single family and townhomes, yeah.
Okay. And just kind of looking at rendering, there seems to be we seem to be looking at trees in the area as far as maybe new plantings and whatnot in the canopy. Let's do this. Come up, remind us your name. I know you've given it once. Let's talk about what you're proposing here.
Once again, thank you for the opportunity. Kevin Estes with Land Solutions, 2925 Berry Hill Drive, Nashville, Tennessee, 37204. Thank you. So we have been very blessed out here to having developed much of what you've seen on the screen out here, as well as also about to break ground on a 55-plus community at right behind the R3, right there, the courtyard to Stewart's Creek. When we did Blakeney subdivision next door, we did preserve roughly 45% of the tree canopy there. It's in open space for in non-developable area, long-term preservation. I feel like there's and at courtyards, we're closer to 50% of the tree preservation, and at this property, we'll be around 45% of the tree preservation. I think there's an opportunity with that hilltop out there as these properties develop to preserve that hilltop. We're very interested in that because it's a significant amount of acreage once it's all put together, not just the properties we've developed, but also future properties around there. I actually had to make the hike to the Job DeWitt Cemetery, which was a very interesting piece of Civil War history. I never even knew about it, but Mr. Reed spent 4 or 5 hours of his time telling me all about it one day, so that was nice to learn. We have three housing types here. One of them is largely what we have built at Blakeney, the front entry, single-family house that you see out of Blakeney right now. We have decided to go away from the front entry townhomes into a rear entry townhome for the 33 townhomes that we're proposing around the open space that where we're planning on putting a large dog park there. And then we have a cottage section here that the rendering is actually showing you the cottage section with the front porches, how they'll line up along Rocky Fork Road. They all have master bedrooms on the down, rear-loaded entry, all single family. They're a little bit more narrow than our other single families, but they are designed as cottages, and we're very excited to introduce that product out here because it's going to be a little bit more high-end finishes, a little smaller square footage, but we feel like it's going to be very attractive to, once again, kind of my age of people. They will have the opportunity to have some second stories, but it is going to be a large mix of 1-story and 2-story. They will be mixed up in there. And I think it also, we're planning on, and we're working with the city right now to run a pedestrian path that won't interfere with the widening of Rocky Fork as it becomes 3 ways, but a pedestrian path to run all the way back along the whole frontage of Blakeney and this development to connect it back to the amenities and connect these two developments together. So we are excited for the opportunity to continue out here. Blakeney's been a very successful project, just not for us, but for the city. And like I said, we've put a lot of lots on the ground over the last 6 years out here. Not all the houses are built, but all the lots have been sold. So we're excited to continue this development out here. So any questions, I'm glad to answer, but.
Okay. Any question for Mr. Estes?
Thank you.
All right. We've heard from staff. We've heard from the developer. Do we have any other questions or any discussion? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
To approve the staff comments.
I have a motion to approve for staff comments. Do I have a second from Charles? I have a motion and a second to approve for staff comments. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? This motion's approved. All right, we are on to rezoning request. The first one was Andrea Patty, 63 North Lowry Street, rezoning C2 to PCD, and they've made a request to defer this for 1 month.
Yes, it has been requested to be deferred.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve or not approve this 1 month deferment request?
Motion to defer.
I have a motion to approve the 1 month deferral request. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of deferring this item for 1 month signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is deferred. We are now on to a preliminary plat. The first item is Talia Trace, Section 1, 12495 Old Nashville Highway, owner developer, Old South Properties.
Yeah, this is a preliminary plat that has already been approved once, but their approval did expire, and so they have resubmitted it. This is, it's on Old Nashville Highway and Rocky Fork Road. It's only 2 lots, it's 10.66 acres. It also includes the dedication of a couple of different roads for right-of-way and easements. It's 2 lots again, but it's in the Talia Trace PRD. We had a few comments. These are all relatively standard comments. I do want to point out they are dedicating the right-of-way for the Rocky Fork Road there. And that we did make a recommendation regarding the final plat will have to be recorded before issuance of permits, and that the water and sewer main and the construction plans are still under review, so we want to keep those, all 8 of those comments, but they're all relatively informational and standard type comments. So with those comments, staff would recommend approval.
Okay, questions for Kevin?
There were no changes from what was previously approved.
No changes from what's previously approved.
Move to approve with staff comments.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments from Amy. Do I have a second? Second. Motion and a second to approve with staff comments. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? This plat is approved. We're now on to final plats. The first one is Rooker's Bend, Section 1 and 2, Florence Road and Rooker Road, owner, developer, M&T Development Partners, LLC.
Yeah, this is the final plat for Rooker's Bend, Section 1, Phase 2. It's 50 lots, 16 acres in the R3 zone. It's on Florence Road and Rooker Road. We had a few comments. The major thoroughfare plan does designate Florence Road as a minor arterial, and adequate right-of-way does exist to meet the requirements of the 40 feet from the center line there. And the major thoroughfare plan also designated Rooker Road as a minor street, and 25-foot right-of-way will be dedicated as a part of this plat as well. Comments 2 and 3 are just standard comments there regarding signatures and fire flow. There is a small area of core property that there is a stormwater pipe that does cross, and we just asked them to provide that easement. So that would need to remain. Comment number 5 regarding the driveway culverts along those 3 lots has been addressed and can be removed. And so comments 6 and 7 came from CUD, so we would we'd keep those. So basically the 7 comments, we can remove comment 5, and with the remaining comments, staff would recommend approval.
Okay, questions for Kevin? I will entertain a motion then, or do you have a question?
No,
You're-
I was going to move to
All right, well,
approve.
thank you. I have a motion to approve from Randy. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Further discussion. All those in favor of approving this signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This final plat is approved. We're now on to agenda item E, a concept plan. This is from a Power Academy, owner, developer, Enon Springs Road West, owner, developer, Springs Public Schools.
So this is a concept plan, so a little bit different than our traditional site plan we'll see. It's not your formal site plan, so this is just a little step beforehand just to make sure everything's all on the right path for it. So Empower Academy would be a charter school. They're submitting for a location on Enon Springs Road West, which is north of Rocky Fork Allenville Road and south of Old Nashville Highway. This facility would consist of 4 phases with 2 levels, making up phases 1, 2, and 3, and the 4th phase is a 1-level gymnasium. Upon completion, the building would be 63,523 square feet in size, and the site is located within the Enon Springs Gateway Overlay District and will have to conform to the standards required by the Overlay District. And I believe this is the first development that we have seen come within this overlay district so far. So still new requirements that we haven't seen yet, and this will be the first of that overlay district to be proposed here. Total parking required is 253 spaces, and they are showing for 253. And then handicap requirement of 7, and they're showing for 7 spaces as well. The architectural elevations that have been submitted show a mixture of masonry products, which is a mixture of glass, glazing, and metal, and brick. The Enon Springs overlay requires a minimum of 35% of the window space or void area of the facade's surface area. As proposed, 20% is shown. There is a base, body, and cap for the building design. The base may be an entire level for the multi-level buildings, and the body should be a minimum of 50% of the area for the facade, and the cap may be established with a cornice or molding, and maybe the entire upper level if desired. As designed, the building does meet the criteria for the architecture. A 2-foot base layer is shown, 1-foot cap is shown, with the remaining 31-foot 10-inch considered the body. So everything they have shown does now meet design, or the design overall for the building as they are showing for this section. There's within the Enon Springs overlay, there's multiple levels as far as the design of the buildings are concerned. So as far as the base, cap, and body of the building, that level is being met with what they have designed and shown for us. As far as the design review is concerned, the primary materials shall compose of at least 75% of the facade that is visible from the public streets and at least 50% of the entire building. Upon completion of the entire building. The north, south, and west elevations would now meet the 75% material requirement. So these plans have been revised since the packets went out, so we have received updated plans which now do meet the design review as far as that 75% threshold is concerned. They have now upped the front facade to 78% masonry primary material, the south side to 81%, and the north side to 82%. The remaining materials will be metal, so that would leave you with 22% metal on the front, 19% on the south, and 18% metal on the north. So the way that ESO does differ from our traditional design review, metal we now allow as a secondary material, or if it's a architectural design of sorts. So that's what they are showing as their secondary material on this building. The ESO also dictates color, and applicant shall provide coordinated palette of all materials and colors. Primary materials may be up to 3 colors, but should not be bright or vibrant, and secondary materials may be up to 3 colors as well, and may be brighter than primary material. The applicant has shown that various shades for the primary material of brick is to be utilized, and 1 color is proposed for the metal, as shown that these colors would meet the requirements set forth in the ESO. A couple standard comments, all to remain. There was standard comment 4 regarding the right-of-way on Eden Springs Road that has been corrected, and so that second sentence of comment 4 can be removed. Staff comment 1 regarding the full set of construction plans, that is something that will be required as part of the site plan submittal, so it will remain. Comment number 2 was regarding the fire flow at the site. There were fire flow tests done by utilities department, and the site does meet the requirements for minimum fire flow, so the second sentence of this comment can be removed. Comment 3 is regarding a location of a remote FDC that has been addressed and can be removed. Comment number 4 is regarding the phase 3 parking and a turnaround that is compliant with the fire code for the fire truck. That comment 4 goes along with comment number 6 regarding adequate turnaround. So based on the turnaround they have provided to us, it does not meet what the fire department requires. So both comments 4 and 6 will have to remain. Comment number 5 is regarding a fire hydrant location. They need to add an additional one, and they have done so, so comment 5 can be removed. Comment number 7 is regarding a submittal of a traffic study, and the applicant has noted that a traffic study is currently in progress of being conducted, so we don't have that at this time. Comment number 8 was regarding a sidewalk along Eden Springs Road connecting to the internal sidewalks, and that has been addressed and can be removed. Comment number 9 is regarding the trees on the site, whether they're remaining or removed, and the applicant has noted that this will be done at the site plan stage. Comment number 10 was regarding the base of the building to be at least 24 inches in height, and they have done so, so that can be removed. Comment number 11 is regarding the 35% minimum for window or void space on the building. This is one of those additional requirements set forth in the ESO that is not traditional of our design review manual, so 35% is what is required for a retail or commercial building, so basically anything not residential in this area. I've had some discussions with the applicant about this, so they're sitting about 20% right now for the window or void space in this area. There's some discussion going back and forth about the requirement of 35% and that potentially being too much to the applicant to meet for a school. So the applicant is here and can further address that comment and the reason for what they have decided to go with that 20%. So at this time, though, we'll leave comment 11 because ordinance does require 35% and they're showing for 20%. So we'd like to leave comment number 11. Comment number 12 is regarding the building material elevations not meeting the 75%. They have done so, so that can be removed. Comment number 13 is regarding the landscaping, screening, streetscape, and lighting plans. Those have not been submitted with this concept plan, but they will need to be submitted as part of the site plan submittal. Comment number 14 is the pervious area for the site. Minimum is 20%, and they're showing for about 57%, so that is now being met and can be removed. Comment number 15 is regarding a location of a school zone signs and lights on Eden Springs Road West. So that will be, we'll need to leave that comment. We'll address it at the site plan stage. Comment number 16 is from our utility department to add a 1,500 gallon grease trap to the site. One was shown but not looked at by utilities department yet at this time, so we'd like to leave that comment and let them address it. And then comment number 17 is regarding the additional fire hydrant to be added to the site, and they have done so, so that comment can be removed. Well, so we'll go back through this again. Comment number 3, 5, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 17 can all be removed and have been addressed. So with that, staff recommend approval with those above listed comments, but once again, I know the applicant has came tonight and would like to speak on that 35% requirement, so that is all we have for staff.
Okay. Let's go ahead and hear from the applicant then to speak about the 35% window void requirement. Give us your name and address, please.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Ethan Levine. I'm with Manuel Zeitlin Architects. The address is 516 Hagan Street, Suite 100, Nashville, Tennessee. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. We have some exhibits to share. We had emailed them in advance, but I'm not sure if anybody was able to get a copy of those. These are in addition to our initial submittal. Are we able to pass those out?
Sure. You're saying you have additional ones that we haven't?
We received them this afternoon,
so Yeah. he
has a hard copy of them.
Okay.
Can I share this one?
Yeah.
I think everybody has a copy now. So we have a few pages here, cover a few different points in varying levels of detail. But what we'd like to start with, I think, first is our initial interpretation of the ESO in terms of glazing requirement. As we read the requirement, we interpreted the specific mention of the commercial use as not to include educational, given educational's building being very different than a typical commercial retail building in terms of its occupants and the way it functions. We have an understanding of the ESO as it relates to the commercial buildings. The intents, at least to us, seem pretty clear. Thinking of a retail building, a large amount of glazing typically on the ground floor, a sense of openness, and also with office buildings similarly. Alternatively, schools, historically and particularly in recent years, the topic of security has become pretty paramount. And so percentages of glazing are something that we've given a lot of study through our practice and take pretty seriously. I think we all, of course, we're architects, so a lot of glass, we love the idea. Daylighting is really important. It's something that we always give a lot of consideration for educational design. But we have to strike a balance between those wants and needs, and also creating a safe environment for the occupants, and particularly the students. A couple of other items to note, and I'm not necessarily moving through this in a linear fashion, but I'm trying to touch on the high points. With the ESO, there are requirements to locate the building close to Enon Springs. If we were given, full reign to kind of design the site plan as preferred for school purposes, we would typically push the building further back from the street, again, for security reasons. But in this case, we're complying with the ESO site plan requirements for building location with its adjacency to the main thoroughfare, which in many ways kind of further, I think, underlines the need to be considerate about the glazing configuration. So our approach in terms of the architectural design was to try to strike a balance there in areas where the public would be entering the building, where we want to create a sense of welcome and be able to differentiate public space from non-public. We have provided a high percentage of glass, which is well above that 35% requirement. But where we have classrooms, we're proposing a lower percentage at a level that provides more than adequate daylight. There are some exhibits near the rear of the, I think this is exhibit number 4 shows a daylighting study, just for example. So glazing in the classrooms that provides adequate daylighting, but also balances that with what we would consider to be, a more appropriate glazing configuration to provide a safe environment for the students. Another thing that's of note, given this is, has students of elementary school age will be here, the youngest students by building code are required to be on the lower floor. So in particular on the first floor, our consideration for glass proportion and glass size is, again, very seriously being considered in relation to security. A couple of other items to note. This is kind of a higher level of detail within the language within the ESO. We also understand that we didn't see that there was a kind of a blanket requirement for 35%, but there is a differentiation between the ground floor and the upper floor, which is noted on the second page on the top left. For ground level retail uses, the facade surface area shall incorporate a minimum of 50% window or void area. For ground level office or other commercial uses, the facade surface area shall incorporate a minimum of 35% window or void area. And for upper levels of all commercial uses, the facade surface area should incorporate a minimum of 20% window or void area. So I guess to back up, I think our initial take would be that we feel that the way the ESO was written to not specifically mention educational use, while the underlying zoning does designate educational as a different use than straight up commercial, it sort of makes sense that they would have these glazing requirements for commercial uses and not specifically state that they're required for educational. But regardless of that, we feel that the charge to create a healthy and safe environment is really the most important piece of this. As an example, just for comparison, we have several examples on Exhibit 3, just showing some pre-existing buildings in the Smyrna area, some of which are quite dated, and some of which are more recently constructed, understandably outside of the ESO, but they at least show sort of a precedent for what is more typical for a percentage of glass as a proportion to the wall itself. And then on the kind of right 2/3 of the sheet are mostly projects that we've designed over the last 8 or so years. Most of them are charter schools, but you can see where we have kind of landed in terms of what feels like an appropriate percentage of glazing, which not coincidentally is pretty similar to historic schools, and that's more in the 15 to 20% range. These are windows that are 5 by 10, 8 by 12 per classroom, so a pretty good amount of opening on a single wall, providing adequate daylighting, but also again creating a sense of differentiation between entry where it's wide open and classroom. Again, sort of bouncing around a little bit here on sheet 2, the two drawings there are on the top. It's kind of a solid void study. The top yellow drawing is a representation of our current elevation design, and the blue would be if we were to transition to that 30% using the same design sort of concept. And you can see that there's a dramatic difference in void to solid proportion. While that would be, I think, probably a beautiful building with a lot of glass and would make a lot of sense for a typical commercial use, potentially retail or office, again, we don't feel that would be appropriate for this purpose as a school in terms of safety. In addition to that, there are, of course, daylighting considerations just in terms of quality of light. So I mentioned the daylighting study showing that we have adequate lighting from a daylighting perspective, not including the artificial light that we'll be providing, but overlighting is also something to be considered. So glare and the quality of light that's in these spaces is really critical for educational use. And studies have shown that needs to be sort of choreographed in a thoughtful way. Whereas some older buildings, when artificial light was of a lower quality, would have larger amounts of glass. You'll probably notice in schools that were built in the 50s very often, the blinds are down all the time, not just for security, but because they're overlit. And the quality of light is very glary. So again, we're making considerations for, outside of the security concern, just general quality of space. So I think that makes most of our points as it relates to the building design itself. I believe our client also might want to share some additional information about the security and site planning aspects. But I did want to note before passing the baton that there is a mechanism for deviation within the planning review, so we wanted to request that consideration based on these items.
Could I have your name, please, and address?
Yes, thank you, members of the commission, for hearing me as well. My name is Philip Hermsmeyer. My address is 13990 Road 32.1, Mancos, Colorado. But I do live at the Statebridge Suites here in Murfreesboro, or just down the road. Virtually my life is now occurring here. I've designed schools for the applicant, for the owner, for the last 20 years or so. And this is my first school in the state of Tennessee. Over the years, my touchstone, my reference in discussing a very difficult subject of security and safety for charter schools has been the reconstruction of the Sandy Hook School in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. The school has won multiple awards throughout the country. It's received awards from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, even the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, FEMA, and a variety of other resources as an example of a school that is very, very secure and yet does not appear to members of the community or families as if they've created a prison environment. And so what the last page just shows, and I'll just spend a few seconds talking about it, is the new version of Sandy Hook, which takes some of the best practices that we've tried to utilize in this school design here in Smyrna. Some things we've had to forego. The extensive setback of the school from the public right-of-way is now considered best practice. It does go against the prescription of the ESO. We understand, and so we moved the school forward on the lot. We've also, at one point in our careers as school designers, we considered that fences had to be used throughout schools. We understand that is not appropriate and not done for the most part in Tennessee. And so we've altered our strategy just as Sandy Hook. I mean, one would think after a tragedy as terrible as Sandy Hook, the natural inclination would be to completely fence the facility. But what they chose to do, and what we've chosen to do, is use the environment itself, use distance, and use the latest technology to understand whether or not an authorized person or an unauthorized person is coming onto the school site. So I just wanted to demonstrate that we are definitely trying to work within the spirit of the overlay. But when you bring a school like this close to a public right-of-way with the amount of glazing as prescribed in the standard, you are no longer really working in the world of best practices for school design. And so we found we could comply with much, if not most, of the overlay. The issue really is to expose the children with so much glass. Now, the glass will be coated with the most amazing films from either 3M or BASF. These films make the windows bullet resistant. They are not bulletproof. Even a 9mm round fired at close proximity will pierce the film, pierce the window. A round fired from a semi-automatic rifle will absolutely pass through the glass without any effect whatsoever. So the film is really intended to prevent someone who fires multiple rounds into a window to weaken it and then to bust through that window to open a door. That's what its purpose is, and it does that very well. But it does not protect the children from a determined attacker who has, with large window glass, a very clear picture of what's going on in the school. So that's the, all I really wanted to say, and that's why we're asking for this deviation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the commission?
My comment would be, for safety and security, I don't have a problem with the 20%. But I am concerned that, I mean, we just built a road. I mean, y'all are the ones that chose what property that you've chosen for the school, so we always want, children to be safe and secure. I mean, that, we all up here want children to be safe and secure. That's not ever been an issue with us.
Okay. Kevin or Mitchell, either one, on the overlay that we have here in the requirements. When we looked at this, did we anticipate, and I know that we're using commercial, and we know that this would fit within that zone. Did we delineate between restaurant, retail versus education? And well, let's just stop there for right now.
We did delineate, as Mr. Levine mentioned, we did delineate between commercial and office. We did. And then the first floor and second floor on a commercial building, things like that. We did not delineate education uses. We anticipated largely that this would be commercial and possibly some multifamily residential in this area, certainly. And so we don't have different rules for, other than the commercial versus the office. We really don't have any differentiation. So we didn't anticipate commercial education uses, not that we forbid them or anything like that either. We didn't really, the overlay doesn't dictate anything with regards to the use of the property. It's the base zoning that dictates the use. So we certainly didn't anticipate this use, and so we didn't have rules for the use. So they fall under, it's not a residential use certainly, and so it would fall under those commercial or office type requirements. So
We were looking at it from a C2.
C2 zone, certainly an
Yeah.
allowed use in the zone. That's not an issue whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay.
So the reason for the setback requirement, though, is to try to create activity along the street.
Activity along the street, not having a building well off the road with just a big, large expanses of areas of parking that you're looking at.
Which works well for commercial, for restaurants, for all
Right,
those
certainly.
kinds of things.
Having the parking on the front and the rear, and they have done that. I mean, there's not really an issue there with regards to our guidelines. But that is why the overlay does not allow for, building at the very back of the property and all the parking in the front. It's meant to be more of a
I'm
aesthetic.
wondering if moving the setback back might achieve a couple of objectives. One, the security concerns, but second, could it also facilitate the queuing within the school? I'm thinking out loud now, but,
Well, I mean,
because I know
I think-
queuing's gonna be one of the major issues.
I think they've got enough area there that they could probably meet we have not seen that study yet, but I think they could probably accommodate the queuing in either scenario with that regard. Certainly, yeah, the overlay, the overlay was that it would be something that would have, and we're hopeful to see something, the highest kind of level of development we can see in Smyrna is with the intent of the overlay. That this would be something that would be a kind of a gateway with the anticipated that at some point we hope to get that interchange at Rocky Fork and Rocky Fork and I-24. That this would be kind of that similar to, I mean, we've modeled it after what Murfreesboro did on Medical Center Parkway. I mean, that's what we're shooting for. And so that's what we're looking at. And so that's why we wanted to bring more of the buildings more closer to the road if possible, and those kind of things, so.
And I'll tell you from my perspective, and having been a part of, the overlay and as far as setbacks and whatnot is concerned, I don't want to start seeing deviations from that, because we did that for a reason. And as well as the, reason that we did as far as what we were looking for, as far as elevations and materials that would be allowed and not allowed, or allowed at a smaller percentage. So I don't want to deviate from what we're trying to achieve from a setback perspective at all. And I do, I am concerned, of course, about safety and whatnot. So as I understand it, with what's before us, and taking in consideration the staff comments to remain, we're at a point here where we're trying to decide whether or not we want to go outside of what is required in a C2 zone as far as the window area requirements. And there, we require 35%, and they're at 20. And they've stated their reasons to keep it at 20, and I think we've heard from staff as far as the reasons that were written to have it at 35. So I think that's where we're at.
I agree with the 20.
Well, and I think we've heard from our resident expert on the 20, so if she's good, I think we're good.
Yep.
I'm good with safety. I don't like to go against design review, because as Tim said, there's a reason that we have that in that area. It's a quandary, because we don't want to start deviating from what the big picture was to look like in that area. So, but as far as the design of the building having 20%, I want it to be safe. If the school's going to go there, I certainly want it to be safe.
And that's what I'm thinking too. I mean, we're talking about a school education, not commercial, not retail, not, so I'm okay with the 20%.
But it is a private commercial property.
Right.
Private
When
commercial.
you boil down, it's a private commercial property.
If you look at our vision for the gateway.
Correct.
Then you don't want to deviate either.
Is this the right place for the school? It really doesn't fit if it can't meet the criteria for our Enid Springs overlay, right? So is this the right place to put this? And if we deviate today, and that's almost half, 20% is almost half of 35, so if we deviate now, somebody else comes behind them with a similar building and they're at 22 and we allow it, like Tim said, there's a reason it was set at 35, to get some continuity from there to the interstate, because that corridor is gonna develop. It will develop, but knowing that, and I'm sure when they designed this, they knew what the requirements were. So I'm at a place where I think it needs to meet the requirements. Because if we deviate now, later on down the road, we'll have to continue to look at that. And if we, stay with our 35%, then we have continuity up and down
in that area.
The area, yes.
Kevin, is this our first building that's a part of the corridor?
It is.
On out the road to schools, of course, the schools are off the road out
Yeah,
there,
they're-
but some of that's developing, but still, it's,
Well, I mean, that was all
Right.
the overlay. We have had, we've had discussions, we haven't had anything submitted yet for the townhomes near the entrance to the school.
Mhm.
That was pre-overlay, the commercial property there
right.
hasn't showed up yet. So, yeah, this is really the first development we've had, actual building submitted.
Okay. Other discussion? If not, are we ready? Someone would like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion,
Okay,
sir. And I'm gonna add a little bit more to it.
okay.
So, motion to approve, including approving the 20% as noted, as well as approving an additional up to 50 feet of setback
Okay,
and staff comments.
so I have a motion, I want to make sure I understand correct, to approve with the
Could we
20...
bifurcate the motion? It's two different.
Jeff?
I mean, I don't know why the maker of the motion can obviously make the motion that he wants to make. If you want to amend that, or if someone doesn't like it, they don't have to vote for it. But that's up to the maker of the motion.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve with staff comments plus approving with a 20% window void area base and with a 50-foot additional 50-foot setback. Is that correct? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Wait, let's figure out. I think I know where it went, but
I think it's 2-4.
let's do a
I
roll
said
call.
aye.
24.
Do you want us to call roll?
Let's
Let's
call
just do a
roll.
roll call. Tim Slate, aye. Mike Allen?
No.
No.
Amy?
No.
Aye.
No.
Okay.
Motion failed.
Okay, so the motion fails. Okay, I'll entertain any additional motions.
I'd like to make another motion, sir. May I make another motion?
You may.
Sure.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve with staff comments, including the 20% of class.
Okay, so approve with staff comments and the 20% glass.
Yes.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, a motion and second. Staff comments, 20% glass is on the table now. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So we're 3-3.
Failed.
Failed.
Motion fails for lack of majority.
So I will accept any further motions.
The drawing has two sections when they talk about their version of glass versus the staff recommend, or the 35%. As I understand it, the classrooms are on the right, and there are other spaces to the left. I'm wondering if it would be possible to increase the amount of glass on the left, but for safety purposes, keep the proposed glass on the right where the classrooms are. Does that make any sense?
That's certainly something for discussion. I think it's all on the table right now. We don't have anything approved. I think
See what I'm talking about, the blue versus the yellow?
Yes, I understand what, yeah, I see what you're talking about.
You have classrooms on the right, looks like administrative, a gym, and all those other things on the left.
I'll suspend the rules and, yes. I know.
Just wanted to be able to speak to anything if it helps.
Okay, I'll tell you what, why don't you just have a seat till then, and then we'll see if we get to that point. I thought you had something specific.
I
Okay.
do too, what was just there.
Okay.
And I understand what some of our commission is stating as far as if we set this precedent, we make the exception now for the 20%, what happens if another establishment, whether it be commercial, education, retail, whatever, comes in and says, well, we want to do 25? Well, that's what we're here for. We can make those exceptions or not. Just in my opinion, I'm for the safety first and foremost. I understand that we've outlined the zoning and the requirements, but I feel like that's our job here. That's what we are here to do, and we can make exceptions if there were, like I said, someone else that came through and requested something different or not. But that's kind of where I stand.
And
This
I
isn't a
don't-
one size,
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you, but there's the other side about a planning commission to look at what's being proposed and does it meet our design review requirements. And I think that's equally as important, especially when the planning commission and council and whatnot said, okay, this is our corridor and here are our requirements to be on this corridor. I think this is a great project. I would love to see it here. But I would just really like it to meet design review, especially being the first one here.
I don't know if there's been any other land that you've looked at.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Well,
that's not even something we can go into right now.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good
That's
question.
way
Yeah,
outside
but
of
that- I
us.
know,
That's a
but
good question.
I'm just putting it out there
Yeah,
for,
okay.
us.
Yeah, I'll suspend and let you.
Thank you. If I may, just following the kind of thread of the conversation, it sounds to me, and I'm just trying to make sure I'm interpreting and understanding what everybody's saying, that the primary concern is setting a precedent that deviates from the intent of the design overlay. In early discussion, I think there was acknowledgement that although the underlying zoning does allow for educational use, the ESO didn't specifically anticipate the educational use occurring in the corridor. And so, given that there isn't specific language to differentiate educational from commercial retail or other commercial office and other commercial, would there be a way to specifically mention educational and have a different requirement so that you're not setting a precedent for all other future commercial, it's specifically for this use? And I would also like to add that, again, the ESO seems to have, several tiers and several pieces to it in terms of how it's establishing this kind of overall design intent, all of which we're meeting, other than this aspect, the proportion of glass. So I would say that the majority of what we're doing is in line with the intent of the code, or the overlay, and the glass is the only aspect that isn't, and it's for this specific use.
From an architectural standpoint, is there a reason you can't meet the 35%?
It's physically possible to do, yes.
Okay.
Architecturally.
I don't know that we're in a position tonight to do a carve-out, and this is, Kevin, kind of in the form of a question to staff, if we were to say, if either creating requirements for educational buildings within the corridor versus commercial, because this is this does meet the definition of a commercial building. I don't know that we can, right here and now, without going back through and reworking an overlay that we could get there.
Yeah, it would take, because it's a zoning ordinance, it would take a couple months, and even if we started the process to now, you're just gonna be 2 months from now. Or, yeah, well, 1 month, next month. But we're not ready, we don't have anything ready for you all to vote on tonight, so you're looking at November at the earliest before a second reading in council could be heard. I mean, you have administratively, the planning commission can deviate from the standards, as you said earlier. So, I mean, that would be an option if you wanted to deviate from the standards. You could, as part of the vote, limit it to, this type of use or something like that. I mean, that's certainly, it's something you could do within the ordinance as it's written today. That would be part of the reasoning behind the deviation would be because of the use being education, not commercial or office type, more conventional, I guess, commercial or office development. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, I'm just saying that's.
You're saying that's a potential.
That's certainly a potential to be done.
Are there potentials to increase percentages of windows in the non-student classroom areas? That's.
It could be done, yes.
To you, yeah.
And if I could speak specifically, I think that was your comment. If we're looking at, left and right with the main entrance being sort of center, the left side does include classrooms. There's a single story piece that includes classrooms facing the road. And then the gym is kind of the next element. There is a large percentage of glass in the gym entrance. It's almost all glass. So the next element that would really be receiving that glass would be the gym. High glazing in a gym could be could make a lot of sense. I don't know if that, if we're looking at math, if we'd be able to sort of offset the low number with that, but it would definitely add glass. It would increase the percentage of glass.
Okay.
If we were to do that.
But at this point in time and tonight, we don't know where we would be at to do that.
In terms of what it would look like?
Yeah, and where we would fall percentage-wise if we were to do that.
Right.
And then that gets back to the original is, what we can and can't do with an existing overlay in place as far as, a carve-out for a school. Although, Kevin, are you saying that if there were a motion that stated a specific even if it states a specific reason, we're still kind of there, aren't we?
Yeah,
I mean,
you basically, the ordinance requires you to, if you can approve a deviation, if you determine it will not be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the public, the grounds for the request are unique to the project, the deviations are necessary to achieve the design intent of the project, and the deviations are not contrary to the design intent of the overlay district. Those are the kind of the criteria that you have to consider when making an approval. So.
Is it still your recommendation to stay with the 35%?
I think I hate to deviate the first you see. I fully understand why they're asking for it and fully get it. I got kids in school still, so fully understand that. But I also hate to, we spent a lot of time creating the standards and what we were wanting to see here, and I hate the very first project out of the gate we're deviating from. So.
Okay. Jeff, if we remain at an impasse here, or is it at a point in time if we could just continue 3-3 that?
Well, problem with having an even number, right?
Yeah.
So, yes, it would go down as failed because, someone could make a motion to deny and you'd still be 3-3, I'm assuming, unless somebody changed their mind in the last 5 minutes. But that's how it would go down. And so they'd have to bring back another plan.
Okay. Okay, are there any other motions to consider then? I'm sorry, you were standing back up there. I didn't know if you had
I
anything
didn't sit
further.
down, actually. I can.
Okay, I guess I saw you turn around.
I did want to add, if I may, as part of our presentation, we did find language that did not specifically say it was 35% throughout the building. It differentiates the ground floor and the second floor. I'd have to pull the percentages, but
It's 50% on the first floor and 20% on the ground floor for commercial uses, for retail uses, yeah.
for retail.
That's the differentiation, the other one. And then it's 35% for office or other uses.
Oh, okay. Can I borrow that, Lisa? I'm just making sure that I'm reading it correctly of the 1, 2, and 3 for ground level retail
Ground level
uses?
retail is 50%. For ground level office and other commercial facade is minimum of 35%. And for upper levels of all uses is 20, it could go to 20%.
So that would be less than 35% across the entire facade, if we did 35 and 20.
I mean, if you did 35 on the ground floor and 20 on the first, yeah, or on the second floor, yeah.
Is there an?
I'd like to make just a quick comment to the commission. And I speak only for myself, but because we, or at least I put the motion out to approve the 20%, does not mean I won't vote favorably for the 35.
Okay.
Right? So you can't just assume that because I wanted 20 that I won't vote for 35. Right?
Okay.
I would just prefer 20.
Okay.
But we don't have 35 in front of us.
I know.
Well, with the condition, the comment had, would require 35 if you wanted to.
Right.
Make
That would
motion.
just be straight staff comments.
Right.
Right?
And I want to ask you some logistics here. If there were a vote and it was, was approved with staff comments with the 35% requirements, could the school petition the BZA at that point for deviation?
They could. I think we've had one applicant, do we have? We had two. The BZA at this point has not. It was under design review, that wasn't the overlay. They did not, they upheld planning commission's decision.
Okay.
So certainly that would be an option. I can't speak for the BZA and how they would vote on this.
Yeah, no, I'm not
but-
suggesting that
But
they
I'm just saying that
would.
historically, that's what's happened.
Okay.
The other thing is, this concept plan, they can't get a building permit on it anyway. I mean, they have to come back, they still gotta bring a site plan back to you. And my understanding is this is primarily, they need an approval from the city for their purposes of starting the mass grading of their site. And so that's really why this is even in front of you as a concept plan to begin with.
So we would be, if we're voting to approve a concept plan, which is
You would have
before us.
another crack at the nut next month if you wanted to look at it again.
Because they move forward, we move forward, and then we're on
Right.
to starting to work on sites, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, obviously, they have to weigh this 35% requirement, that there's no guarantee that gets approved at 20% next month, and they have to weigh that in their mind, their as
But that
well.
would leave the door open for additional discussions
Sure.
and for them to look at what they could potentially do with the gym area and things like that,
Right,
correct?
correct.
Okay.
Or is it better to defer and then
I
bring
think,
us something.
if I may, for the purpose of the project's overall schedule, the site plan moving forward is critical path.
That's how I took it.
Although the building permit is immediately thereafter, so we'll need to resolve the elevation aspect of this quickly, but the site plan is most important.
Okay. But to help, if the commission were so inclined to approve it, the concept plan with staff comments, that keeps you guys moving forward.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So, are there any additional motions to be made or to be considered?
Question.
Mhm.
Can I just move to approve the site plan?
You could, well, this is a concept plan, but
Concept.
you could make a motion to approve, well, you can make a lot of motions, but,
A helpful one.
yeah. This is my understanding, and I am not suggesting this in any shape, form, fashion, or whatever. We have not heard a motion to approve with staff comments. And you could make a motion, if you were so inclined, or anyone else, to approve with staff comments, and it would be voted upon, and if it were approved, then it would move forward, and then they would have an approved concept plan going forward, knowing that, as it sits right now, there's 3 persons up here that support the 20% and 3 that support the 35%, and they would be able to continue moving forward. And then we have another bite at the apple in 30 days when we look at a preliminary at that point.
I will move to approve with staff comments.
Okay, I have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, a motion and a second. Further discussion.
Okay, and here's my problem then. Are we now approving something that's not safe and secure for kids?
No, because we'll look at it again next month to approve the plan. They know they have to meet the 35% if we approve
And
this
safe
tonight.
and secure?
Yes.
Well, I heard
Is that
that there are potential other areas that would not be detrimental to students that they could look at as far as additional glass. So that could be considered that, again, I don't know where we're going to be at next month, quite
I
frankly.
mean, I don't either, but I don't want to approve something that's not safe and secure for students, but I also want it to meet design review. Does that make sense?
Right.
It does.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody's.
Right, that's where we all are.
Yeah. So I think everybody's kind of there with you.
Okay.
Okay. Further discussion?
Yeah, and I think it would be helpful when they come back next month if there are some options on how to get there. That might help our deliberation.
I think that's a great idea.
Correct.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? This concept plan is approved. Okay. Believe me, that's the worst thing that happens is that we bump. Yes, we did. All right, I'm gonna give everybody just a quick pause to get paperwork out of the way and stuff like that, and then we'll go on to the next one.
I just have him as like 1 and 3. So he was kind of confused. Thank you. And then that other. Oh, I know. Okay. Interesting.
Something tells me we may now be on to the more mundane. We have a site plan. Our first item is the Hyatt Hotel, 801 Expo Drive. Owner, developer, Nayan Kumar Patel.
Yeah, this is a more mundane item. We've seen this one in the past already. This is.
Thought we had.
Yeah, previously approved back in March last year. Site plan expired, so they are back here, getting closer to getting their building permit. It is a 118,250 square foot, 5-story hotel located at Expo Drive and Sam Ridley Parkway. The surrounding sites have hotels, so very similar use in the area. The tract over to the west is vacant still at this time, and they would have 2 access points, one off of Expo Drive, and then they would have an access easement cutting through the western tract off onto Colonnade. Square footage of vehicular use area for the site is 51,033 square feet. That does require for 5,103 square feet of landscaping. They're showing for 6,308 square feet. Total parking required is 112 spaces, and they're showing for 112. And handicap parking is 5 spaces required, and they're showing for 5. The landscape plan shows a mixture of street trees and shrubs planted along Expo Drive and Sam Ridley Parkway. Additional trees are proposed to be planted within landscape islands throughout the site. Architectural elevations submitted show a mixture of stone, ephes, and metal accents. The primary materials shown of glass, glazing, and stone account for about 85% of the entire building facade. Ephes, which is considered a secondary material per design review, covers 5% of the building. Metal will be used only as an accent and cover no more than 10% of the building, and the current plan shows for 10%. So for all intents and purposes, all the building does meet design review requirements. Standard comments 1 through 5 all to remain. We had a couple staff comments. Staff comment was to submit construction plans for our utility department and our public works department. Comment 2 is a standard comment. The required fire flow is 1,750 gallons per minute at 20 psi, and the site can meet that requirement. Comment 3 is to provide additional details on the retaining wall on site. That could be done at a later time when they are ready to pull building permits. And additionally, a 1,500 gallon grease trap is required, and that is a utility comment and can be addressed with utilities at a later review. So with that, staff recommend approval with the above listed comments, and not much has changed since the last time you saw it.
So
Sure.
back to your last comment. So has anything changed since this was last done? Is this essentially the same?
I believe it's essentially the same, but there might have been a tweak here and there on the elevations, but it's all consistent from the most part now.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve with staff comments.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments.
A second?
Miranda, second. Further discussion?
I think it's a real credit to the town to get a mainline hotel like this, so congratulations.
Very good. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This site plan is approved. Next, we're on to Talia Trace, Section 1, 12495 Old Nashville Highway, owner, developer, Old South Properties.
As Kevin mentioned earlier tonight, on that preliminary plat, the site plan is on the same boat. It's expired, so they are seeking reapproval for it. This was previously approved back in July last year. It is, this first phase, which they are seeking, is 52 units, and that would consist of the total 271 for the entire development. There's a single access which is proposed onto Rocky Fork, Almaville. The square footage of vehicular use area for the site, 22,062 square feet, and that does require 2,206 square feet of landscaping. They are showing for 3,425 square feet. Parking required of 104 spaces. They have a total of 178, which is a mixture of surface, garage, and driveway. Handicap spaces aren't required, being this is a townhome development, but they are showing for 1 at one of the common areas. The landscape plan shows a type C landscape buffer bordering the properties to the east and west, which are zoned R1. A variety of trees and shrubs are shown lining the collector road, which is the main entrance off of Rocky Fork, Almaville, and continues north through the subdivision. Additional shrubs are shown at the base of each unit. Architectural elevations submitted show the first floor to be built with brick and the second floor to be built with a mixture of fiber cement and brick. The elevations are consistent with the approved PRD. Standard comments 1 through 5, all to remain at this time, and then staff comment 1 is regarding the utility lines, and that's going to be determined by the town developer at a later time. The mail kiosk shall be installed and operational before the COs are issued for the first building. And since this project was last approved, the revised flood maps have been adopted, so we just want them to update the date on the plans reflecting the most recent day of those flood maps. So with that, staff would recommend approval, and this is the exact same plan that y'all approved last year and saw, so.
Exact. Question for Mitchell? I will entertain a motion then.
Motion to approve, staff comments.
A motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve with staff comments. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion is approved. Next, we have Veterans Landing, 10259 Old Nashville Highway, owner to developer HBG Companies.
So this is another site plan y'all looked at last month. The issue last month was the landscaping, I believe, so we have received revised plans addressing that concern. They did eliminate one unit in doing so, and they've also been able to eliminate one parking space in one of the common areas. With the reduction of a unit, a less parking spaces, it's not required anymore, so they are still meeting our parking requirements as a result of this. So in doing so, they have achieved a 15-foot wide landscape buffer along that southwestern property line. So for all intents and purposes, everything is exactly the same except for that reduction of a unit, reduction of parking space, and then increasing that to a 15-foot wide landscape buffer to a type C. So everything else is the same on this. Staff comments should all be the same on this, but standard comments 1 through 6 would all remain, 1 through 7 rather, shall remain. Comment 1 was regarding the road name approval list, and they have provided that to us, so comment 1 can be removed. Comment 2 is a comment from our Public Works Department. It can remain. Public Works will have another chance to review that when grading permits are issued, so comment 2 remain, and then 3 and 4 are CUD comments, and those will remain at this time as well, but staff will recommend approval with those remaining comments.
So in essence, they went back and they're now meeting the design that we've asked, that
Correct.
our
They-
requirements are.
Yep, they've worked through it, and they've found a way to shift some things around, eliminate a unit, and they've been able to achieve it.
So we've got something with no deviations to what we require. Okay. Awesome.
And still consistent with the approved PRD.
Yeah, with the prior approved PRD, yeah. Okay. You heard from Mitchell. Any further discussion?
I'll move to approve with staff
I
comments.
have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's approved. We're now on to mandatory referrals, the Fall Creek sewer easements. Who will be speaking on that?
I've got it.
Okay.
This is something that is a project that the town is looking to do to obtain easements for the extension of sanitary sewer into the Fall Creek Drainage Basin, which would extend public sewer to the Mona Road and Bill France Boulevard area near the National Super Speedway. A developer will be constructing the extension, but the town will be acquiring the easements. We did attach the maps that shows the locations of those easements to be acquired. The Planning Commission is required to review this and find whether or not it's in keeping with the adopted comprehensive plan of the town, and make a recommendation to the council, and staff would recommend approval.
Okay, you heard from Kevin on this. Any questions?
I'll move to approve with staff comments.
I have a motion to approve with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor of this recommendation to council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This is approved. I think we're on to the September bond review report, which is always entertaining. Kevin?
Actually, we have the subregs first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm jumping ahead. I'm just getting hungry.
ready to go home.
Did that earlier, so it's okay.
We did send out a draft of some revisions to the subdivision regulations. This is something we have not looked at in a comprehensive way since 2009. There are some changes in state law that we needed to adopt. We also needed to want to bring about some consistency with our adopted fire code as well as the stormwater ordinance. And so there's a lot of pages in there, but I did provide a summary to kind of hit the highlights of what we're talking about, so I'll go through those. We did revise, currently everything says Director of Public Works, and we did revise Director of Public Works to Town Engineer in multiple places, and in some places we did and/or there, depending on the responsibility of the individual there. We did revise, there was our section we had regarding vesting rights. State law has changed on that, and so this would make that consistent with state law. We did recommend revising the requirement for a letter of credit. Currently, we require the letter of credit to be from a bank with a location in Rutherford or Davidson County. We did recommend that just within Rutherford or any other bordering county. And that's just, we want it to be close by if we do need to call one, but certainly there's lots of banks with locations in primarily Williamson and Wilson County that we currently can't accept letters of credit from, so we do want to add that. We did eliminate the requirement that a final plat be approved by the Planning Commission prior to beginning construction of any infrastructure. It would still have to require preliminary plat and construction plans. That's what we used to require. We added that final plat requirement, and that we didn't think that was necessary any longer, so I want to go back to how we used to treat it. The right-of-way requirements for new roadways would not change. However, we did eliminate the ability to use extruded curb on public streets. Would now require standard curb and gutter or rollover curb and gutter. Most developers are doing that already, and all the cities around us require that. There's still one or two still using extruded curb, and so we did want to eliminate that. One caveat on the right-of-way requirements would be that the required right-of-way for a cul-de-sac would now be 110 foot instead of 100, and the required pavement diameter would be 96 instead of 80, and that is to be consistent with the adopted fire code. We did revise the language regarding the requirement of additional right-of-way. This is another state law requirement along existing public streets, just to be consistent with what the state law states now. And then the construction details, the existing construction details would be removed in their entirety and replaced with the new details that we had that was in the separate PDF from the regs. Again, that's just updating those to be consistent primarily be consistent with what everyone around us is requiring. And there's some of the things aren't changing too drastically, other than the curbing requirement. These revisions would not apply to any subdivision which has been approved and is currently active as required by state law. So the vesting rights, everything that's approved already would be vested into the current regs. So, but this would apply to any new subdivisions. There is one state law that was optional and was not required. The previous state law and what our current regs require, that any subdivision plats that are 2 lots or less with no new road or utility construction can be reviewed by staff only. The state law did change to allow for subdivisions, and that's kind of that same scenario with no new roads or utilities, to allow for subdivisions to be reviewed by staff up to 5 lots from 2. And also there's an option that staff could even approve final plats up to 25 lots in a situation where a preliminary plat was required. If the Planning Commission approved the preliminary, we could approve the final plat. Council does have to concur with that if we want to do that. Staff is not proposing to amend the regs to allow for either scenario. We thought it was Planning Commission's important, and we don't want to take over part of your responsibility. So I just did want to make you aware of that. That's out there. We can certainly add it if you all want to, but we did not include those 2 scenarios. So the plats, other than the 2 lots or less, which is what we have currently, would still come to the Planning Commission. So again, that's what's there. This is really just for discussion tonight. If you have any questions or comments, we have to advertise a public hearing and hold a public hearing on this, and we would plan to do that at your next meeting. Certainly, once we get the draft cleaned up, we'll also probably stick it out there on the website and let the developers and engineers that work with these all the time know what's going on as well.
Okay. So no action required
No
tonight?
action required tonight.
Any questions for Kevin with what he's presented to us then?
Just for clarity while I was looking at it, and number 4, because 3-105.4 says planning commission will approve the final plats, but then on point 7, construction may begin actually with the preliminary plat being approved. That's really kind of the difference in those,
Right. Currently, we require the final plat
before they even do construction.
before they
This
can
would let
begin
them go ahead
construction. And
with.
this would it go back, again, this is how we had it for many years, was the preliminary plat and construction plans, they can begin construction before the final plat comes to you all.
But it's still time, but they've already started.
Right. And because the final plat is really just to establish those
Sure.
legal right-of-ways and easements and lots.
Okay.
Makes sense to me.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we'll see that again.
Yes.
Now,
Now the bond report.
now the bond review.
Try to get this as quickly as I can here. I do have several items. Thankfully, a couple of them we may be able to release. Woodcrest 5, this one is 100% built out. The developer did indicate that they have paving scheduled the week of September 18th. That is after their dates, their bond expires on the 14th, so we will need to extend it. If they're able to complete it prior to that deadline, we would recommend reduction and go to maintenance. Otherwise, extend it 3 months at the current amount. Walnut Ridge Section 1 is in the same kind of situation. And so we would make the same recommendation there, other than we did allow for a 6-month recommendation, just because we haven't had that one nearly as long if we extend it at the same amount. Addition to Village of Valley Green Section 3, everything is completed. We can go to maintenance on that, so we would recommend to reduce that and go to a 1-year maintenance bond. Bankside Section 5, Phase 2 is kind of a little bit of an odd one. Everything is complete on the development, but the Planning Commission approval did require a secondary emergency access road to Morton Road. That has not been constructed yet. They are looking to do as an alternative to create an access to Kedron Church Road as a part of their development in sections, future section. The developer is not looking to build that in the next year, so we would just recommend keeping that bond for now on that, just for that access road. Prologis South Park, this is primarily a sewer bond. We've only had that one a year. They should be, I did hear back, an additional update on that one. They did say they should be completed mid-October, so we would want to go ahead and extend that one at the same amount for now. Ideal Tridon, this is the industrial project on the end of Tridon Drive. We would recommend an extension on that one. They're working with utilities. They're having to relocate a water meter and everything, so they should be close to completing, but we would recommend an extension on that one at the current amount. Sam Griffin Warehouse, everything is complete and we can release. Ashley Grove Apartments, we're trying to get everything done. There's about 3 little items left. They want to try to get that finished. If they are able to do that by October 3rd, we can release it. Otherwise, we can reduce it and extend it 6 months. And then Blakeney, Section 1, Phase 1. I did not hear back from the developer on that one. They are about 96% built out. We have had that one 3 years now, so I wouldn't want to extend that any more than 6 months. That's the same amount. Buckingham, Section 2, Phase 1. This is the end of the maintenance period. There's 3 items left. If they can get that done, we can release it. Otherwise, we would need to keep it 3 months. Cedar Hills, Section 4, Phase 1. We've had this one a year only. It's about 24% built out. We would recommend a 1-year extension at the same amount on that one. That's it.
Okay. Questions for Kevin on the bond review report? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the bond
We
report.
have a motion to approve the bond review report. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the September bond review report signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Bond review report is approved. Staff comments?
I don't have anything else.
Anything from the commission? Okay, so I did this, I guess I should say, I didn't do this last year, so I'm gonna do it this year. Saturday night's a fish fry. And if you wanna come out and meet the community and have a good time and eat some good catfish, I'll tell you that I will be in the cooking area. I will talk to you about river catfish versus pond catfish. I'll talk to you about the proper temperature to do fries. Will not talk to you about glazing. Will not talk to you about buffers. But anything to do with catfish and the Rotary and all the charities that we give back to in the community and the money that we raise, I'm more than happy to talk to you about it, and I'll probably give you a piece of catfish while you're standing there. We're adjourned.
Sounds good.